So this actually happened to me. This is a real incident that happened to me, but I'm sure you've heard it as well. Many years ago, I was a proposal manager and I went into a new client, and for a government proposal. And I said, okay, great. How are we going to win this? What's our win strategy? And the sales guy kind of looked at me a little bit strange and said, what's that? What do you mean? And I said, well, how are we going to win? What are we going to do to win? And the sales executive literally said to me, the customer really loves us. Okay. So, it's a hint. That's not a win strategy, right? What we say, hope is not a win strategy. So what is a win strategy? Let's go through some of the things that it is. It's a set of actions, a set of conditions implemented by actions critical to winning. Okay. So the things that if we do these things, we ought to have a better chance of winning. Now, some of them are going to be painful. Some of them could be impossible at the time, but they're things that we're going to have to do. We've got to develop a win strategy early. It's going to guide how we team with other people. It's going to guide the people that we pick to put in our proposal as the key personnel. It's going to help us with the organization of that. And, when we do this early enough, it's going to help us guide the customer contact. So a win strategy is something we're going to have very early on. And it's a formal thing, okay? This is not an ad hoc, throw something together. This is actually, we're going to recommend now is a formal team puts this together. It's written down. It's posted conspicuously. We say in the war room these days, all war rooms are electronic. So somewhere on SharePoint or somewhere in Zbizlink or somewhere, you're going to have your win strategy written down, and people will be able to look at that and say, aha, this is how we're going to win. And it's not a static thing, okay? You're going to have to status it, because these are actions we're going to take, not attributes we have. Actions have progress, actions have outcomes. And so we're going to status the win strategy at least weekly, so that we know where we are. Are the things that we said we were going to do actually happening? Okay. This is something that's going to unify the team, because if we have a sound win strategy, everybody who's working on the proposal then knows this is how we're going to win. So it actually, if they can get involved in that, then they have a real understanding of what they have to put in their part of the proposal. They have a sense of ownership with that. Okay, so this is a bit like, people say, oh, should I write the executive summary first or should I wait till the end? Well, you should write some version of the executive summary at the beginning of the proposal, right? Because in there, you're going to have the win strategy. In there, you're going to say, this is how we're going to win. This is why you should pick us. And so in the same way that, that win strategy, that executive summary helps the rest of the team have a clue as to what they're supposed to be writing about, so does the win strategy. These things are important. It makes it very easy for the team to evaluate what they're writing against the win strategy, okay? It also makes sure you have a very consistent set of proposal products, because everybody knows what they should be doing, what they should be writing about. The very worst thing that you can have is inconsistency between parts of the proposal. So if you have a technical volume and a management volume and a cost volume, maybe a past performance volume, whatever, then they have to be a totally consistent story across all of those products, and the win strategy helps drive that, okay? Many years ago, I had a debrief from a general who actually said, one of the easiest ways that he was on the evaluation, acquisition side, and said one of the easiest ways that bidders can self-eliminate is to have inconsistencies between proposal sections. So that's really important. And the other thing it's going to do is actually raise team morale, because people are going to be committed to winning this program and understand why and how we're going to do that. If you don't have a win strategy, then you probably shouldn't be bidding, right? So anyway, and it influences all parts of the process. I mean, if you are responding to an RFP and you didn't know the RFP was coming out, you probably shouldn't be responding to it. Because if you didn't know it was coming out, I guarantee one or more bidders did. So they're going to be in a much better competitive position. Why are they in a better competitive position? Because they started early, before that draft RFP ever came out. Certainly before the RFP came out, but before the draft RFP came out, when it was probably just a request for information, or even before that, when they're looking in the government budgeting and saying, oh, the government's going to be buying this thing in 5 years' time, we need to start now. How are we going to win? That's when you start doing your win strategy. Okay, it's going to start influencing who do I have to put together as a team to actually win this thing. Do I have to make some investments? You know, if I really want to win this, let's call it a $500 million program, how much money do I have to invest to get me to that point, both technologically and that sort of thing. And also it helps, your win strategy helps your interactions with the customer to shape the procurement, because the thing, as we'll see in some later slides, the thing we want to do is to make the customer write the RFP so it actually matches what we can do, not what our competitors can do. So that could be things you have to write white papers or give some briefings, you know, helping them with shaping the sections L and M in the proposal, in the RFP rather. Once the RFP, the draft RFP comes out, you know, I've seen people do this. They start nitpicking the draft RFP and going, oh, there's a typo here. You really meant that there. This section number's missing, whatever. Sure, we can sit and criticize the government's ability to write RFPs, but that's not important right now. What's important is focusing on the important issues. Okay, and so what we should be doing is going back to the customer, back to the government and saying, okay, based on the draft RFP, I think you should change this requirement, right? Not focus on, you know, the little nits of typos and things like that. Once we get that draft RFP and we can't talk to the government anymore, now we're on our own, we've got to write our proposal. Our win strategy is there, helping us create those proposal products consistently across the whole deliverables. And, you know, it might help concurrent activities like, you know, if we're doing advertising or trade shows and things like that during the actual proposal submission. Okay, so it's a long-term effort, and the win strategy helps coordinate that long-term effort, but you must start early. So what we're going to do is look at some of the key elements of a win strategy. Now, this is based on what we at SMA call the 5 keys. It's been around since we've been around, pretty much, which is since 1982. We've used this process on many government opportunities with our clients and help them win, including some really big ones. Okay, so let's look. There's basically, we call these the 5 keys. So the first one is the institution. This is basically the teaming. Who am I going to team with? Do I need to have a partner? Am I going to be the prime? Am I going to be the sub? Who are our subs? If we have a small business requirement in the RFP, or there's going to be a small business requirement in the opportunity, who are those small businesses? Why would we bring them on? What are they going to offer? That kind of thing. Okay, we'll talk about this in more detail, but this is just a quick overview. So organization is the people. You know, who are the best people? And one of the things that we generally have to do in a government thing is, you know, who's going to be our designated program manager when we get the contract. And so how do we pick that program manager? The win strategy helps us do that. Program plan, number 3, is how we're actually going to do it. Okay, and bearing in mind what the government's looking for generally is a low risk bidder. Okay, so that's going to come into that. Item number 4 in the 5 keys is the system engineering aspect of this. So it's basically our technical solution to best meet the customer requirements. And here, by the way, we're assuming we're not in a, you know, lowest price, technically acceptable kind of procurement. You know, we're not offering pencils here. This is going to be, you know, airframes and vehicles and ships and things like that, large systems. The last thing, of course, is the deal, which is the price. But it's not just the price, you know, here is how much it's going to be. It's over the entire program life cycle. So, you know, you might have a slightly higher price, but over the life cycle of the program, you end up with a lowest cost. Okay, so some things to consider there. What we're trying to do Okay, you know, the customer knows they have some requirements they want, they have a budget they want, and they know what most people can provide. So somewhere in the middle of those, the intersection of those three in this little Venn diagram, is what we call the RFP sweet spot. That is the point where that RFP meets the objectives of affordability, utility, and competitiveness. Okay, you know, obviously they can't have everything that they want technically because they can't afford it, and people can't provide it. So they've got to have this balance of intersection between what they want, how much they can afford, and what people can actually provide. What we want to do with our win strategy is actually to change that reality. Okay, so you know, we're going to offer what they want, but we want to, through the win strategy and that early work we want to do, is to actually change what they really want. We're going to influence them, you know, pre-draft RFP to more to what we have to offer and push away our competitors. Okay, so we're going to change the evaluation priorities. So what we're trying to do here is to change reality, to increase that intersection between what we have and what they want, and exclude what our competitors can offer. Okay, so like I said, if you're trying to bid on a proposal, on an opportunity, and the RFP just came out and you didn't know about it, clearly you can't do this. You're way behind the curve, and you should probably not bid. Okay, if you've been involved with this since you first found out there was a budget that Congress had set for this particular item, then you know you're going to be way ahead of the curve because you've already started to do these activities. So why do we have a process to develop a win strategy? Well, as the great Sun Tzu said, you know, victorious warriors win first and then go to war, while defeated warriors go to war first and then seek to win. So here is Mr. Zhu on his Windows Surface computer, I can see. Anyway, so he's somebody we go back to. And for those of you that were involved in are involved in the APMP, the Association of Proposal Management Professionals, this was actually the theme of the annual conference in Denver in 2011, and it was, you know, the art of winning is what we called it. So anyway, a bit of background there. Who's on the win strategy team? Let's sort that out. Okay, the win strategy is not a sole effort by one person, although it can be sometimes, depending on the size of your team. And so, you know, here's the ideal, right? If you're working on a 100 million plus ACAT1 type opportunity response, then you're going to need these people. You'll obviously have to scale this down depending on the value and the amount of investment you're going to make to win, the amount of BNP funds you're going to put into it. But most people have these functions in their company, or maybe your teammates have them or whatever. If you're teaming, you're going to have a program manager. That's the guy or gal who's going to have to actually run this program when you win the contract. We'll be positive here. We'll say when you win the contract, not if, right? You're going to have a chief system engineer, the chief technology guy, the guy who's responsible for the technical solution. Proposal manager and proposal strategist may be the same, but hopefully not. Sometimes you can look at a consultant, help come in and help you with the strategy. Proposal manager is the guy, obviously, who's got to do the proposal, actually manage that. You know, you've got somebody from business development who deals with that customer. And then you can have some consultants come in and actually play the other roles. Okay, so you know, those people, consultants are good. I mean, as a consultant, of course, I'm going to say that, but consultants are good because we can offer you an unbiased third-party view of what you're doing with respect to that opportunity and that customer. Okay, sometimes it's very easy to get consumed in your own opinions about the opportunity, and we go back to what the original slide said, which is the customer loves us. They probably do, but that's not a strategy. Okay, so consultants can help break you of that myth and help you move on. All right, so these are the people that are involved. If you don't have all these people, then you still need these kind of functions. You know, it's like saying, well, I don't have all these people to work on a proposal. Sure, but you still need all the functions. Somebody's got to write it, somebody's got to manage it, somebody's got to do the graphics, somebody's got to produce it. Okay, it doesn't matter who they are. Okay, so this is who should be on our win strategy team. The win strategy team drives the campaign. Okay, so this goes, a campaign suggests something before the RFP comes out. Okay, so what we're going to look at here are some steps, but this is like the overall idea. So here we have, the facts, the opportunity overview, right? What is this about? What's this competition about? Perceptions and judgments, what are the client's issues? What are the competitive issues? What keeps we always say, what keeps the customer awake at night, right? What are the things that they worry about, that they're trying to solve? What's the problem? And remember, the customer isn't just the people that are acquiring the system. It's not just the, evaluation board that's going to actually look at your proposal. It's the acquiring agency, and then it's who's actually going to be using it. Okay, so it's quite often, you could end up with writing a proposal to contracting command, but in reality, the system's going to go to a completely different branch, and it's going to be used by soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, Coast Guard. Okay, so bear in mind that's your whole, rainbow of customers. There's not just one customer. You're going to have a set of vision. Where do I want to be? What's my end state? With this, and then how do I get there? And then validate constantly, like I said, weekly at least. Okay, I put these action plans in place to have this team agreement, to have this technical solution, to have these key personnel on board. How am I doing? What am I doing to get there? That win strategy gets reflected in your ability to influence this acquisition. If you do it early enough, you know what you want to do, you know how you want to get there, you can start influencing the customer as to shaping the RFP to suit you. It'll guide your marketing campaign. Okay, like I said, it's not just the customer, it's the users. You start putting in advertising, start doing trade shows, showing things off, writing white papers, publishing things. People start to take notice and go, oh, your company, whatever it may be, is obviously, way ahead of what we want here, and they have some really cool stuff. So let's try and, you start biasing people towards what it is you've got. And then clearly it's going to drive the formal submissions, just the written proposal itself. There may be orals after you've submitted the proposal. And, you may have to do demonstrations if it's a brand new piece of technology that the government is looking for. One of the big programs that we helped with was the Joint Strike Fighter many, many years ago. And all of these things were involved in the win strategy of, when do you do that flight with that thing, with that particular prototype? When do you put in that ad in which magazines, those sort of things. So it's very important when you get on the big ACAT-1 programs that these things are involved. But you can scale this down to the smaller government proposals. You may not do all these things, okay? But the concept is there. Okay, so let's have a look at the steps. We're going to have a 5-step process to actually get to our win strategy. And each one of these, in theory, has a different lead. So the first one is going to be the program overview. And I'll cover these in a bit more depth in each one in a minute. And so what we're going to do, looking at the program and say, okay, what's the baseline for this acquisition? What's the acquisition environment baseline? Okay, what is it that, they want, basically? And that's going to be the program manager, your program manager designate. If you don't have your program manager involved until after you win the contract, then too late. He should be involved, he or she should be involved right at the beginning with you in looking at this program and going, yeah, we can do that, or no, here's what we're going to have to do so that we can do that. Capture manager, the guy who's responsible to get this thing from business development up to when the RFP comes out. Okay, he's going to be looking at the evaluation factors, determining what the customer wants and needs. So some of these things aren't always stated. There may be some, unstated requirements that, you need to be involved in, aren't necessarily in the RFP, but that they all want. Business development can look at the competitive assessment, which is looking at your competitors. What is it they can do? And so the classic analysis here is the SWOT, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. We all know how to do one of those. That's pretty much what you're going to do on each one. I do recommend, if you're going after a very, very big program, that you do a full competitive assessment, price to win activity. You may have that capability in-house, but there are obviously some good consultants like us who can help you with that and give you a real independent view of where you are with respect to the competition and what your price to win should be. Then we're going to look at the 5 keys. Okay, that's the proposal manager. We'll look at those 5 keys, identify the actions that are going to ensure the win, not the attributes, but the actions. Let's keep an eye on that. And then we're going to have those action plans that are the things that we need to do to implement the win strategy. Okay, they could be managerial, technical, they could be teaming, pricing, whatever. And the lead for those, we call them strategy element monitors. It's a kind of a somebody whose responsibility it is to monitor that particular aspect of the win strategy and make sure the action plans are happening. Obviously, it could be any of the 4 people above, or you can't dump it all on everybody though, on one person. So you do have to have people. If you're going to do this, then you have to have people that actually look at those parts of the win strategy and make sure that those actions are being completed in time. So let's go into a little bit more detail on each of these steps. Let's look at our program overview. So this is kind of obvious, really. This is going to be creating a database of facts and opinions about this particular acquisition. What are they trying to do? What's the budget? What's the schedule? The obvious stuff, right? Who is the decision-making hierarchy? So you're going to have a source selection authority who makes the final decision, source selection evaluation board who actually will score your proposal. Okay, remember, proposals are scored, not read necessarily, and decide who's got the best score. But there are others as well. They're the actual end customers, the users, developers, that kind of thing. Excuse me. You can also look at the program history. Where has this come from? Has it had a troubled past? Has it had trouble actually, getting to this point, budget-wise or technology-wise or whatever? Very few programs actually start and continue all the way through without a hitch. Congress normally upsets it and changes all priorities and things. So what are the pitfalls behind that history? And then they're going to provide that background to the strategy team. So basically everybody has a full background on what's going on this program. And then the very first time your win strategy team gets together, they're going to be fully aware of what all of the factors are involved in getting this acquisition on the road. So that's our baseline acquisition information, and that's going to help formulate our strategy. Okay. Next step, the evaluation factors. And this is going to be the capture manager. He's going to look at all of the different parts of the customer organization, the buyer, if it's a system, who's developing that system, putting it all together, who's a system integrator, who are the users, the end users, the soldiers, sailor, airmen, Marines, Coast Guard, whatever. And then the decision makers, your source selection evaluation board, source selection authority. So again, what wins for each of those? What are they looking for? Things change. And so being able to predict how things will change between pre-draft RFP, draft RFP and final RFP is going to be in your advantage. What do you think is going to change? And then how do you rank those evaluation factors of this, these perceived factors? How do you rank them? What's the most important thing? Is it technology? Is it cost? Is it risk? That kind of thing. Okay. So that's what the capture manager does. And they create this list of probable section M type information. what the evaluation factors are going to be and the sub-factors in there, and how they rank respect to one to the other. So that'll help capture the perceptions of the organizations that influence the procurement decision. Okay, so we've got some good information now. We've got all the history of the program and what it's all about, and we've got these evaluation factors. So we've got a good opportunity assessment. Let's look at the next thing, which is our competitors. You cannot do a win strategy without knowing what your competitors can do, because one of the things we're trying to do is to not just be me too, I can do that. You want to be serious differentiators and have something that only you can do. Okay, and so you really need to understand what your competitors are up to. So this is your self-assessment. This will be the business development guy or gal will look into this and go, okay, what's the SWOT for each of our probable competitors, and assess yourself against that criteria, right? Because SWOT isn't just only two parts of the SWOT are actually about you. The other two are about your competitors. Okay, so do the SWOT for each of them, and then identify what wins for them. So what do they need to do to win hands down, with a runaway success? What would they need to do? That gives you an idea. And then, having taken your evaluation factors that you think are going to be used, how will those evaluation priorities favor them, and which ones would come out the best? And then this is an interesting exercise. For each competitor, develop the customer's 25-word press release explaining why they chose them as the winner. We'll show you an example of one later, but a 25-word press release saying why they chose them as a winner. Now write one describing why you lost. Okay, these can actually be very focusing. It seems like, why do you bother doing that? Just do it, and then you'll see what I mean. It's an interesting activity, but it helps you focus on, not just why you can win, but you need to understand why you might lose. Okay, that's really important. Okay, so that's the competitive assessment. And then the next step is we're going to go to the 5 keys. As I mentioned earlier, we have to have statements here defining what wins for actions for each of these things. Okay, so we're going to be aggressive. We want discriminators. We want to have winning discriminators. We want to have something that is so different from the competition that it gives us something to talk about. We're not just the same as them. We're not even, me too with a twist. Now we're actually got something really different in our technical solution or our management solution or whatever. And the other thing we want to do as a result of the SWOT is to look at things that help us to lose. How do we mitigate those? Okay, because one of the things about SWOTs is, if you have a weakness, okay, that is an opportunity, that's a threat, if you like, from the opposition, from the competitor, because in their proposal, they're going to start ghosting your weaknesses and explaining why they're better than somebody who had these particular issues, which might be you, of course. They're not going to mention you, but that's what they're going to do. They're going to try and ghost the competitor's weaknesses, and you should be doing that as well. So, the whole point of the 5 keys is to create these actions that are enforceable. It's no good if you create win strategy actions and don't do it. You have to actually do it. They're going to help you win, put you in the best position. So let's just look into more detail in those. Here's our 5 key elements. As I mentioned earlier, I should keep hammering on this, but the institution is the infrastructure that links you, if you're the prime, and all of your bits and pieces, all of your divisions that are involved in this. Any team members you have, okay, any subcontractors you have, any small businesses you have, with the customer. So this is not in isolation. This is how you're going to work with the customer. Okay, which parts are going to interact directly with which parts of the customer's organization. And so this is going to, clearly meet the program objectives. to exploit your core team strengths and eliminate critical team weaknesses. The organization is the way the team is structured, so it's the people. So the institution of the is the companies and subs and that kind of thing, and the customer. The organization is now down at the people. It's at the human resources level. Okay, so it's the same sort of thing, but you know, who is your key personnel going to be? Who are your key personnel going to be? You know, what tools and processes are you going to use that actually work directly with the customer? You know, who has the authority? Lines of authority are very important in these things. How are you going to communicate between the team? Are you, going to run sort of, concurrent engineering type techniques and that sort of thing to get stuff done? Okay. All right. So let's look at the program plan. So this is a cost-driven plan, an integrated master plan, and a schedule, integrated master schedule, for those of you that are into program planning and controls. So the IMPIMS is an important thing. In a lot of ACAT 1 programs, you're going to have to submit that as one of the volumes. How are you going to get it done? That's going to be important, right? And the important thing is schedule risk and technical risk and stuff like that. So in this case, the schedule risk and applying lessons learned from previous programs, that's something that gets asked a lot in RFPs. Here's some programs, and then what did you learn from those, and what did you improve? Okay, so that helps drive the program plan. System engineering, again, is about reducing the technical risk and getting to those program objectives, mission, technical, cost, schedule, all that sort of thing. I think somebody once said, and I can't remember who it was, somebody once told me that, it doesn't matter what the RFP is, it doesn't matter what the opportunity is, what the acquisition is. At the end of the day, the government just wants to buy something with the lowest possible risk. Okay, it might have some advanced technical features or whatever. It may be some cutting edge piece of military hardware, but at the end of the day, they just want to buy that with the lowest possible risk. So they're going to be looking for the bidder who can offer that at the lowest possible schedule risk, cost risk, and and technical risk. Okay. And then finally, the deal. As I mentioned earlier, this is probably not applicable to the lowest price technically acceptable, but this could be applicable to some of the newer types of opportunities we get, which are the VATEP, the value adjusted total evaluated price, where you may be more expensive, but you've got some really cool technical advantage, and if the competitor had to implement that technology, they'd be even more expensive. So I'm not an expert on VATEP, but that's my understanding of it. It's not just the price you're putting in, it's the price of the value of what you're offering. And also it's over the program life cycle. It's not here's the down payment, it's so many dollars a ship or whatever. It's over the total life cycle. So, it's it may be more expensive, but it costs less to maintain or whatever. Okay. At the end of the day, every government program overruns, and there's all sorts of reasons for that. But you should have a plan to look at least being able to offer something that isn't obviously going to overrun the moment you start the program. So that's the summary. Let's just look into the 5 keys in a bit more detail. So this is the institution. Just remember, this is the organization of companies, the entities involved. Who's going to be the lead? Is it you? Or would it be better for you to be a subcontractor to another prime? Okay. There's one proposal I did many years ago was actually working for a very big company, but they weren't the prime, they were the sub to a small business, because one of the requirements in the RFP that it had to be a small business. So that customer issue drove us to actually have a small business as the lead. And of course, as the big business, we helped them write the proposal, which they eventually won. So it's not always that, we want to be the prime. Okay. What are the winning relationships? One of the things that people get into very early is Work share. Well, I want, X amount of work share or whatever, whether it's in terms of technology or money. That's probably too early to have that conversation, because what you need to understand is what wins, not what's just good for you. Do we have things we need to augment? Okay, and it may be real. Yeah, we really don't have that, so we have to bring in another company to help us have that capability. Or it may be perceived in that, you are aware of the fact that the people in the government don't think you can do that. Okay, so that may influence that. What other companies can and should join us? It's important to figure out what else you need. I've done several proposals for the European Space Agency, who have very strict rules on the amount of money that has to go to each country, because the European Space Agency is funded by all of the countries, and so there has to be a certain amount of money that goes back to each one. So in that case, there you're looking at, well, do I pick this? I need a company from, let's say, Belgium, right? What companies in Belgium could actually help us with our total system that we're going to put together? Okay, and then it's not just necessarily primes and subs, but you might form a joint venture. One proposal I did, we actually formed a joint venture between two British companies, a French company, and two Italian companies, and we formed a joint venture to actually put the proposal forward as a single entity. So, you're trying to put together that open teaming model that kind of wins but doesn't thwart the competition, because the last thing you want to do is, stitch up the competition. It would be nice if you could, but not always. You're trying to set up a business here, or set up an institution that creates a business entity that's designed to win, because if you concentrate on execution, that's no good if you can't actually win. So concentrate on winning, and then execution will follow. One of the hint bubble there says, these are organization decisions above the pay grade of the program manager, which is true. This has to be done at probably at CEO level. Okay. Let's look at our organization. Let's look at people. So here are the people. What's the program manager? Are we going to have integrated product team leads? How are we going to do this? How is it going to be? What geographical and political customer issues could influence the organization decisions? Okay, who needs to be where? How are we going to interface with the customer? If we can put something forward, will that help win? Back in the day, years ago, it used to be, hey, we've got this web interface for our program status and stuff like that. Now that's pretty commonplace, but once upon a time, that was a cool thing to be able to offer. Does our team structure mimic the customer's team structure? So there's a one-to-one match in there. And then, how are we going to actually take all that information and be able to report it up? If you're having to do an IMPIMS, then how do you incorporate the schedules of all of your parts of your organization, parts of the institution, if you like, the subs and the primes and the partners and that? How do you bring all of those schedules together and be able to report to the customer, hey, look, we've got one big integrated schedule. We can see everything from all the parts of our organization. So that's kind of interesting. Okay. Here's the program plan. It's all about program risk. How do we minimize or eliminate that program risk? Okay. What can we do to influence the risk, to make sure that doesn't happen, or to minimize it at least? One of the things interesting there is keeping sold, and so this is a factor of, if the customer has a program that's had a sort of a spotty issue to actually get to this point, and they've got a keeping it sold problem, which means that the last thing you want is a change in the Congress or something in the political side of the government that says, we're not interested in this anymore. So you've seen that happen, right? I mean, things like, you know, littoral combat ship and things like this, programs that cost a lot of money to get started and then fizzle out because politically things change. And so the customer has an issue of keeping the program sold. You know, so what can you do to help them with that? Okay. You know, what can you do to convince the evaluator that you have the lowest risk in your proposal? And this is something that needs a lot of work. So this program plan strategy is the things that you can do, the actions you can take to make sure that you have or can offer the lowest possible risk of getting this thing made and done into service, whatever. God, it takes long enough as it is. The system engineering is the technical side of this. So, you know, most people, even if you have a solution already, you're going to have to say, you know, the way I tend to write proposals is very much for each section. Well, hey, so here's your requirements for this thing. This is what you said you wanted. And we understand that because, you know, never start we understand, but you know what I mean. So you're going to get into it and understand, make sure the customer understands not just what they asked for, but why they asked for it, right down to maybe the end user level of how important that particular technical requirement may be. And then say, well, you know, here are all the things you could do, but here's the thing that we want to do because that's got the best answer and whatever. So you've got this trade space, you've got these different solutions that could be used, and you want to make sure that, you know, your technical solution you know, is going to come out top in all of those system level trades. If not, what do you have to do to get it there? Okay, what do you have to do to get your technical solution to be the top one, have the best features, or whatever? And then as things change, you know, how are you going to respond to that? So it's not really the design, it's really how you get there. That's the important thing, okay? And then finally, the deal, as I mentioned earlier, this is what's important to the customer. Is it the acquisition cost? Is it the funding profile or the total cost of ownership? You know, total cost of ownership is across the whole life cycle of the program. Funding profile could be, well, we can only afford to do this in this financial year, and then we've got so much money in the next one. If it's an international program, offsets are very important. For those of you that do that, you'll know that. You know, if you're bidding to a foreign country through foreign military sales, you know, what are you going to do in that country? Can you have something built in that country that would offset the price, so they get work out of it as well? And then what are those cost risks, and can you use them to your advantage? Because, you know, other people have cost risks, right? How are you going to put your financial bid together? You know, things like guarantees and warranties, the sort of stuff that the lawyers in your company will absolutely hate because they won't want to offer any of that. But that's important, okay? How do you guarantee your product? What warranties are you going to give? How are you going to repair and replace it? That kind of thing. You know, what's the discount if it's if we're talking about a small thing, not a warship? You know, maybe it's a rifle sight, maybe it's a radio, you know, that kind of thing. Is there economy of scale discount? So the more they buy, the less it costs. And then the idea of P3I, the pre-planned product improvement. This is something that, you know, those of you that are in this business know is no product is static. Okay. You know, it takes long enough to get something in the hands of the end user, the soldier or sailor, as it is. It could take years, by which time it's probably obsolete. Okay, so if you look at something like the Joint Strike Fighter, they're already on 4th or 5th generation improvements to various parts of that airframe, various parts of that avionics system, because the electronics change. Newer chips, lower power, more capability. That's all part of that product improvement program. You know, how are you going to do that? How are you going to, what are you going to charge for that? Okay. So that's all important. And so it's not just the price, that's the important thing. It's everything in there. Okay. And then Going back to our win strategy step action plans, we talked about strategy element monitors or champions, call them what you like. But for each of those 5 keys, you're going to have action plans, how we're going to get there, how we're going to do it, and have reviews. It's no good having a plan and then not reviewing it. Have a single slide. One of the things that I like in the proposals when we were co-located before COVID, you'd have the wall of truth, and these days the wall of truth may be a page in a SharePoint site or whatever. The wall of truth has things on it, and one of the things on it are going to be the 5 key win strategy elements, okay, and the status of the action plans to get there. This cannot be static. I can't emphasize this enough. It's actions we take, not attributes we have. Okay, so that's kind of super important that we have action plans to get us to the point that when we submit the proposal, everything is in place for us to be the winner and have the best competitive position. So this is an example of a win strategy decomposition. This is something that it's talking about hardware. And so our win strategy validation action here on the left, it says we will build an all non-developmental item design or equivalent. We'll not build a design. We will not bid a design and development program. So basically everything off the shelf, right? We're going to have everything off the shelf. And so that's just one element. And then when we look into our proposal, we'll say, well, we're always selected off the shelf hardware, and us doing so forces us to be non-responsive to requirements. So clearly we have to do something else. And so where would we mention that in the proposal? Okay, so this is how the win strategy gets decomposed into win themes, which then get put into various sections of the proposal. So every author has to be aware of what are the parts of the win strategy that actually impact what I'm going to write. And so you can look at this one later, rather than, I don't want to read all of this, but you get the idea. Okay, this will go into your compliance matrix. So it'll help the authors know what's going on. How we're going to reflect in the proposal. So here's our thing: low cost through maximum use of existing non-developmental off-the-shelf hardware. That's part of our win strategy. On the system engineering side, right? In the proposal, we're going to highlight the amount of off-the-shelf hardware being proposed. We can show trade studies indicating the advantage of off-the-shelf hardware as opposed to brand new development. We can offer data that the hardware meets the requirements. Okay, and if we have to do custom hardware for interfaces and things like that, we're going to absorb the cost of that and not pass it on to the government. You kind of do, but that's not what we're going to say in the proposal. So there's some ideas of how that's going to work. Okay. And then let's look at organization. So here's an example of the organization side of it. So this is the human resources thing, right? Here's a good one. We're going to build an organizational structure led by key personnel with proven performance known by the customer and with explicitly relevant experience. This is good because it starts with a verb. Okay, these are things that we are going to do. The bad example is our president/program manager has personal experience with the program sites and leads an IPT-based badgeless team that partners. This is real proposal speak, as you can tell. They work together to ensure a high degree of personnel crossover from the incumbent. Yeah, this is kind of bad because it says what we have now, not what we need to do. Okay, so a win strategy is actions we're going to take to get there. Okay, not things that we've got already. So that's important. Another thing that's important, having gotten a win strategy, is drift. Okay, I mentioned earlier that it's very important that you have action plans and keep following them and evaluating them and seeing what's going on. In the heat of battle and you're getting your proposal, together, things can drift off. You know, as we saw there in that previous example, the strategy statements become full of adjectives, things we have, things, you know, things that the customer likes about us, as opposed to activity oriented. And so, you know, what's happened there is that the attributes have come in, not the actions. And so our win themes now tend to be things about us as opposed to things we're going to do. We also get into this us and them thing. You know, bad proposals talk about us, good proposals talk about a customer. Okay. And so what's happened there is, you know, your win strategy process is starting to go bottoms up, from the you know, bottom up, I should say, bottoms up, bottom up from your point of view, rather than looking at the customer and looking top down on what it is we're trying to achieve. Okay. And then you get into this discussion, you know, what we can do rather than what guarantees the win. And so, you know, it's not about becoming what is, it's about becoming what wins. If you can't do it, then you have to find a way around it. And that's what your win strategy is all about. So make sure you don't drift. It requires a degree of fortitude from, you know, the win strategy team to make sure the actions are being implemented. And it's despite the best intentions, you know, they will tend to drift. And you just have to keep an eye on it and make sure that you're always looking for what wins, not necessarily what is. So let's have a quick summary. There's our 5 keys. Our strategy is defining a set of conditions implemented by actions critical to winning. Okay, so it's all about doing things to get there. It influences all of the phases of opportunity capture and proposal. And there are 5 keys that I will offer as a methodology for you to think about your win strategy in terms of the institution, which is the businesses and the companies involved, the organization, which is the people, the program plan, how you're going to actually do it, system engineering, what you're offering technically, and then the deal to match the customer's financial requirements, whatever they may be. And remember that a win strategy is actions we take, not the attributes that we have. How do we get there? The 5 steps. Program overview, establish that environmental baseline for what that exposition is all about. Valuation factors, define what the customer actually wants and needs that are going to end up in your section M. Competitive assessment, start looking at your SWOT, start looking at your weaknesses, start looking at the opportunities you have because of your competitors' weaknesses. And then we have the 5 keys, which we just covered, and then it's all about action plans. So these are detail those plans to actually implement the win strategy, to actually get you where you need to be. I mentioned earlier, talking about press releases, this is actually, how did we get to the 5 keys? Many, many years ago. This was a good example, actually, that somebody found. As you can see, it's from 1999. It's a long time ago, but this was a program, and it was the Zbizlink space-based infrared system. Okay, but it's nice in that we can look at this press release and say, look, here's the different elements here. So we have the right team, that's the institution. Experienced people, that's the organization. And the resources to develop an affordable, producible design, system engineering, that satisfies the nation's needs at a low cost. That's the deal. So you can actually go through this press release that came out from TRW and Raytheon, and identify the bits of their win strategy, the 5 keys of their win strategy, and how they got there. That's kind of an interesting exercise. It's interesting to try and write your own way at the beginning, just to see if you're, you know, if you can do that. Okay. Since then, I'm just going to move on a little bit. As a company, as a consulting company, we realized that this is a really good way of doing a win strategy. It's something I will fall back on if I have to do one, because it's fairly understandable and easy to do. Not easy to implement, but easy to conceive, shall we say. We wanted something a little bit more robust, so we currently have what we call Making Winning Choices, which is our proprietary win strategy process. We kind of turn it on its head and go backwards into it. We don't have the time to go through it now, but obviously if you're interested in that, it's something that we offer as a solution. I'm just going to throw in a quick plug for SMA. You might have known us as SM and A with an ampersand, but we've been around a long time, and we've been helping companies pursue opportunities and win them, and then actually perform on them. So we also provide program planning and controls, technical management, engineering, and program management and value management to help actually produce a winning program. So this is me. If you have any questions, feel free to email me and I'll put you in touch with the right people at SMA. And I thank you very much for having me, Zbizlink, and Amjad, thanks for having me. One thing I was interested in is, with your software, how does Zbizlink actually help your teams with win strategy? I think I have to unmute. I think you're muted.
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay.
It happens. Well, Zbizlink offers a roadmap and a platform to capture managers and bid managers specifically. For capture managers, you can define win strategies at organization level, as well as for opportunity specific, where you not only build a win strategy, you also define your competitors, you score your team capabilities, and you also analyze your opportunities and make a go, no-go decisions. And while on the other side, to proposal managers, it offers a full program that helps to complete proposal delivery as the whole initiative that can be complied with your strategies, your win theme that you had adopted from the beginning to complete a deliverable proposal.
But what are the benefits of using that for the process, do you think?
I think the biggest benefit is that it finished proposal 3 times faster. And due to many factors, I would go high level, few of them. One is easy to make a go, no-go decision, scoring your team capabilities, including your subcontractors, and analyze strengths and weaknesses of your team, where you are identifying your partners to identify how, like you meant in your webinar, you mentioned specific qualifications by division, by area, or like our diversity. So it helps you to identify the partner, such the good partner that best matches with your the requirements. It shared multiple files, automate the contents parsing according to proposal instructions, interface with external CRM systems like Salesforce and Microsoft Dynamics. It tracks proposal response progress, assigning manageable tasks to your team members, including your SMEs, with your given time frame for individual task. Basically, it gives you a complete project schedule. Additionally, it offers check-in, check-out for the content editing, which you assign to your SMEs or technicals or all of different team members. It also autofill proposal responses from existing documents which you submitted in the past. Either they can be documents or it can be the responses that you wrote by yourself using a Zbizlink system. And it also uses templates that transform the information from, like let's example, from your candidate resume. So it transforms resume information into proposal specific template. And similarly for your proposal responses, whatever the template you have used for this proposal response, it will automatically take the information how your team is writing and map out to the complete instructions that you set aside and those instructions coming from your proposal instructions given by the request for proposal file. It also integrated with the calendar and many of other features. It offers you off the shelf, like social media, your networking, and collaboration, communication among your team members, like that. So it has a lot of other features that I can go on, but precisely talking about how it supports you, the win strategy, and how you can write a good proposal response. It gives you a workspace, and it's isolated workspace for your organization.
Very good. So